a 400-year-old sword that could slice a silk scarf in midair. When scientists cut it open, they found carbon nanotubes inside the blade, the same material we spent billions trying to build in a lab. The recipe that made this steel was lost in the 1700s. Nobody has been able to recreate it since. This sword is not the only thing we can't explain. 6 ancient objects, 6 different civilizations. Every single one of them contains technology that wasn't supposed to exist yet, and nobody knows how they were made. The Roman Empire recorded how much grain each soldier ate for breakfast, but they never once mentioned this. A hollow bronze object, 12 flat faces, each one a perfect pentagon, each one with a circular hole punched through the center. Some are the size of a golf ball, others fit in your palm. Over 100 of them have turned up buried in Roman soil from Wales to Hungary, all the same design, no two the exact same size, and not one document in the entire Roman Empire says what they were for. That's the part that breaks this. Rome didn't lose records. We still have their tax logs, their concrete formulas, their military supply chains from 2,000 years ago. But across all of it, thousands of surviving texts, these objects don't appear once. No name, no price, no function. They built them for 200 years and never wrote a single word about why, not even a footnote, not even a line in a merchant's inventory. 27 theories have been proposed: candle holders, survey tools, religious relics, rangefinders. Not one has been accepted, because when no two are the same size, there is no standardized function to find. Rome's most obsessive record keepers made something they refused to explain, or couldn't. The next discovery has the opposite problem. It's covered in writing, and in 116 years, nobody has read a single word. In 1908, inside the ruins of a 3,700-year-old palace on the island of Crete, an archaeologist pulled a clay disc from the ground. Both sides were covered in symbols, 241 of them, pressed into the clay in a tight spiral. Nobody has ever decoded them, not one symbol, not one word. But here's the detail that changes everything. Those symbols weren't scratched in by hand. They were stamped into wet clay using 45 individual punches, one for each character. That's a printing system, 3,200 years before Gutenberg built his press. 45 symbols is too many for a simple alphabet, but it's too few for a full picture-based language. The symbols don't match linear A, linear B, Egyptian hieroglyphs, or any known writing system from the ancient Mediterranean, and this disc is the only object on Earth with these symbols on it. One disc, one language, one copy, no key, no translation, no second example to compare it against. Whatever civilization made this, they either made only one, or every other copy was destroyed. Over 100 decipherment attempts have been published. Academics have thrown everything at this: pattern analysis, statistical modeling, comparisons to every known ancient script. Every single attempt has been rejected. The Phaistos Disc is the only ancient document that has beaten every linguist alive. A language nobody can read is unsettling, but the next discovery doesn't challenge what we know. It challenges when we existed. Deep inside a South African mine, workers cracked open rock that was 2.8 billion years old. Inside were metal spheres with 3 grooves running around the equator, evenly spaced, perfectly parallel, razor straight, 2.8 billion years before anything with hands existed on this planet. They're called Klerksdorp Spheres, dark reddish-brown, ranging from half a centimeter to 10 centimeters across. Some are nearly perfect spheres, others are flattened into discs. Hundreds have been pulled from pyrophyllite deposits near the town of Ottosdal, all from the same geological layer, all dated to the same impossible window. When these spheres formed, the most complex life on Earth was single-celled bacteria. No plants, no animals, no eyes, no hands, nothing that could hold a tool, let alone design one. Geologists say they're concretions, minerals that crystallized naturally inside volcanic sediment over millions of years, and that explains the shape. But the grooves? 3 parallel lines, evenly spaced, circling the equator of a sphere locked inside 8 billion-year-old rock. Geology doesn't have a clean answer for that. The Klerksdorp Museum put one in a locked glass case. The curator reported it rotated on its own. He later blamed vibrations from nearby gold mining. Nobody ran the test again. 3 billion years is hard to hold in your head. The next artifact doesn't need a big number. It just needs rain, and 1,600 years of it. We're halfway through this list, and we haven't even gotten to the Roman cup that changes color using nanotechnology, or the recipe that's been lost for 300 years. In Delhi, India, a 6-ton iron pillar has been standing in open air for 1,600 years. Monsoon rain, extreme heat, thick pollution, it does not rust. The iron pillar was forged around 400 AD during the Gupta dynasty. It stands 7.21 meters tall in the courtyard of a 13th century mosque. Over 6,000 kilograms of iron, joined together by forge welding, heating metal and hammering pieces together by hand. No foundry, no blast furnace, no industrial equipment of any kind. Iron rusts, that's what it does. Leave a modern iron railing outside for 20 years and it'll be falling apart. This pillar has survived 1,600 monsoon seasons, and it still looks like it was built last century. In 2003, researchers at the Indian Institute of Technology finally figured out why. The pillar contains an unusually high phosphorus content, about 1%, far more than modern iron. Over centuries, that phosphorus reacted with the environment and formed a paper-thin protective layer on the surface, 1/20th of a millimeter thick, a compound called misawite, an almost perfect corrosion barrier that builds itself. The ancient smiths selected high phosphorus ore on purpose. They solved corrosion 1,600 years before we even understood the problem. We needed electron microscopes to explain what a 5th century blacksmith already knew how to build. The next artifact doesn't survive nature, it manipulates light, and it was built 1,700 years before we had a name for the science behind it. In the British Museum sits a 1,600-year-old Roman cup. Shine a light on the front, it's jade green. Move the light behind it, it turns blood red. Same cup, same glass, two completely different colors. The Romans built this in 300 AD. We didn't understand how it worked until 1990. The Lycurgus Cup is a cage cup. The glass was cut and ground down by hand until only a thin decorative shell remained. But the color change is what broke the science. When researchers finally put broken fragments under an electron microscope, they found particles of gold and silver ground down to 50 nanometers in diameter. That's less than 1,000th the width of a grain of salt. When light hits particles that small, their electrons vibrate at specific frequencies and shift the wavelength of the light passing through. Front-lit, you see green. Backlit, you see red. The science behind it is called surface plasmon resonance. It's the same principle used today in medical diagnostic sensors and anti-counterfeiting technology. NASA started experimenting with similar dichroic glass in the 1950s. They needed vacuum chambers and vaporized metals to pull it off. A Roman glassmaker did it with a furnace and gold dust 17 centuries earlier. The Romans embedded nanotechnology into a drinking cup, and nobody figured out the science for another 1,690 years. One more. And this one is the worst. Because this technology wasn't just forgotten, it was lost, and it's still lost. This is the sword from the opening, a blade so sharp that legend says Saladin dropped a silk scarf onto the edge and it split in two before it touched the ground, a steel so strong that crusaders watched it cut through their own swords without chipping. Nobody in Europe could explain it. Nobody in Europe could replicate it. Damascus Steel was forged from woods, small cakes of ultra-high carbon steel shipped from Indian mines to Syrian blacksmiths. The carbon content alone should have made the blades brittle and useless. 1.5% carbon steel shatters on impact, but Damascus blades didn't shatter. They bent, held their edge, and cut through everything in front of them. The metal had a distinctive wavy pattern on the surface called a damask, beautiful, recognizable, and completely unexplained for hundreds of years. In 2006, researchers at the Technical University of Dresden dissolved a fragment of a 17th century Damascus saber in acid and put it under an electron microscope. Inside the steel, they found carbon nanotubes and cementite nanowires. Carbon nanotubes, cylindrical molecules of carbon atoms, one of the strongest materials known to science, forged into sword steel 4 centuries before any laboratory on Earth knew they existed. The recipe died when the specific Indian ore deposits ran out in the 1700s. The trace elements that made the nanotubes possible, vanadium, chromium, manganese, cobalt, nickel, disappeared with the mines. Modern metallurgists have spent decades trying to reverse engineer the process. None have fully succeeded. It is 2026 and the recipe is still lost. A bronze object with no name, a language with no translation, spheres and rock older than complex life. iron that refuses to rust, glass that changes color with nanoparticles, and a sword recipe that humanity lost and never recovered. 6 objects, 6 different civilizations, 6 different centuries. Every single one of them knew something we don't. So how much knowledge has already disappeared, and how much of it are we never getting back? There are more discoveries like these, buried, ignored, and unexplained. If that bothers you the way it bothers me, subscribe. We're not done.